Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In today's video, I'm going to be making my predictions for where I think each team will finish in their conference during the regular season, as well as how they will perform in the playoffs for the upcoming 2020-2021 NBA season. However, before I get too far into it, I want to remind you all to leave a like and subscribe. I've been appreciating all the support that I've been receiving lately, and I hope to see that continue. Now, without further ado, let's make some predictions. We'll start in the Western Conference, where I think that the Denver Nuggets will finish as the number one overall seed. I don't necessarily think that the Nuggets are the team best built for playoff success, but I think that they're going to have a fantastic regular season. They have two terrific all-star caliber players at the top of their roster in Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray. And filling out the roster, they have some really nice complementary pieces like Gary Harris, Paul Millsap, JaMychal Green, Monte Morris. They also have a complete wild card in Michael Porter Jr., who, if he ends up having a fantastic season, could provide them with a true third scoring option that would really put them over the top and make them a true title contender. I'm not quite sure that I am ready to put them as a title favorite yet, but I do think that they are built for some terrific regular season success, and that's why I have them as the number one seed. As the number two seed, I have the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, it is probably true that they are going to be utilizing some load management strategies during the regular season, but I still think that they're going to be able to win a lot of games, even when Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, their two superstars, are taking games off to rest. I loved the trade for Luke Kennard. I think he's a significant upgrade over Landry Shamet. I also liked the fact that they replaced Montrezl Harrell with Serge Ibaka. I think that was another upgrade. They still have Lou Williams. They still have Marcus Morris. They still have Patrick Beverley, who are all nice complementary pieces to their superstars. I think this team is going to be really good. They were the 2 seed last year. I think they'll be the 2 seed again. And I'm excited to see just how good they can perform in the playoffs, because we pretty much already know that they're going to be a solid regular season team. At the 3rd seed, I have the Utah Jazz. Now, I get that it's probably a bit of a surprise to see the Jazz this high, but I really think that this is a team that is going to have a lot of success this regular season. Rudy Gobert himself can bring your team to being a top 5 defense, and this team quietly added some other really solid defenders besides just Gobert in Derek Favors and Shaq Harrison during this offseason. They also have the pieces to be a top 10 offense with Donovan Mitchell running the show and Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conley, and Bojan Bogdanovic all being competent 15-plus point per game scorers as secondary options to Mitchell. I think that Bogdanovic in particular, coming off of an injury, is really going to make this team better, and that's why I have them all the way up here as the 3rd seed in the Western Conference. I am also a huge fan of their coach, Quinn Snyder, and I think that they're going to have a great season. With the 4th seed, I have the Los Angeles Lakers. The Lakers, in my opinion, are right there with the Clippers as one of the 2 most talented teams in the Western Conference. I think that they actually got worse during this offseason, contrary to popular opinion. Well, no, I don't think they got worse, but I think it was much more of a flat line than a lot of people think. Danny Green was a big loss for this team. The versatility that he provided for them on the defensive end of the floor was very important, and even though he was an inconsistent three-point shooter, he still knocked it down at about a 34% rate for the playoffs, and even if he wasn't knocking shots down, opposing defenses had to respect him because of his reputation as a knockdown guy at times. So I think that was a big loss. Wesley Matthews is solid, but he's not quite the same level of role player as Danny Green is. I also don't love Montrezl Harrell. I don't think that he's going to be too big of an impactful player on this team. I could definitely see him getting played out of playoff series, and I don't love that move. I also think that Marc Gasol is pretty close to washed. He really struggled in the series against the Celtics during last year's playoffs, and I'm not sure that he's going to make this team all that much better either. So for all those reasons, along with the probability that LeBron James and Anthony Davis will be taking plenty of nights off following the short off season for them after they won the championship as recently as October, I don't see the Lakers being as dominant in the regular season as they were last year, but I still do think that they'll finish with home court advantage in the Western Conference. At the 5 seed, I have the Portland Trailblazers. I think that the Blazers are going to have a great regular season. They have Damian Lillard, who, in my opinion, is a legit MVP candidate. They don't necessarily have any other top 30 or maybe even top 40 players on this roster, but in Robert Covington, CJ McCollum, Jusuf Nurkic, those are 3 players in like that 40 to 60th best player in the NBA range that are really going to help support Dame and make this team quite a bit better than they were last season. If you really think about it, they are having a massive upgrade at both the power forward position, where they are adding Covington, and the center position, where Nurkic missed the entire season last year. So I think that this team is going to be much improved, and for all the reasons I just outlined, I've got them as the 5 seed. With the 6th seed in the Western Conference, I have the Phoenix Suns. I get the feeling that I'm quite a bit higher on the Suns than many people are, but their top tandem of Chris Paul and Devin Booker is elite to me. Those are 2 top 25 players, and I think that Chris Paul is also going to make DeAndre Ayton much better, both on the offensive end of the floor and holding him to a higher standard on the defensive end. So I think that he is going to be like a borderline all-star type player, and that's going to give this team a really solid 3-headed dragon at the top of the roster. They also have some really nice complementary pieces like Mikal Bridges, a really strong defensive wing, like Cam Johnson, a forward who can really shoot it, like Jay Crowder, who can do a bit of both of those things. So I'm a big fan of the Suns, and I've got them here as the 6th seed in the West. At the 7th seed, starting off the play-in tournament, I have the Dallas Mavericks. I get the feeling that I'm quite a bit lower on the Mavericks than many people are for the season, but they are not going to have Kristaps Porzingis to kick off the year, and I really think that that's going to take a lot away from how successful this team can be in the regular season. They still have some terrific depth pieces. I think that getting Jalen Brunson and Dwight Powell back from injuries is going to really help this team out. Dorian Finney-Smith and Maxi Kleber are terrific role players as well, and with the addition of Josh Richardson, this defense is going to be much better. I just think that with the time Porzingis is going to miss, as well as the upgrades other teams in the Western Conference have made around the Mavericks, I think that, well, they are going to pass some teams like the Rockets and Thunder. They will also get passed by some others like the Trailblazers and Suns, and I have them staying in the same spot as the 7th seed in the Western Conference. With the 8th seed, I have the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors at this point are Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and some replacement players, essentially. But I do like the moves that they made in this offseason. Trading for Kelly Oubre was a nice way to kind of regain some traction at the guard, 2 guard, or I guess the 3 perhaps is where Oubre will play positions. They also made some great signings for the minimum in Kent Bazemore and Brad Wanamaker. So I think that this Warriors team is still going to be quite good, and I still have them at the very back end of the Western Conference playoff picture. With the 9th seed, I have the Houston Rockets. I could have put them lower than this, but on the off chance that they do retain Harden for the entirety of the season, I at least had to put them in the play-in tournament. And while I don't think that they are going to hang on to Harden, if they do, they're probably going to be quite a bit better than this, but if they end up trading him, they're probably going to be quite a bit worse than this. So I kind of put them in the middle, and I think that this is probably something of a median outcome for this Rockets team. With the 10th seed, I have the San Antonio Spurs. I'm quite a bit higher on the Spurs than many people are. I still think that DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge are very high-level players, and if the Spurs hang on to them for the entire season, they're going to make this team quite a bit better than many people think it will. This is also accounting for the fact that we could see some major jumps and improvements from the young players like DeJounte Murray, Derek White, Keldon Johnson, Lonnie Walker. I'm also a big fan of their big man rotation with Jakob Poeltl and Drew Eubanks. So I still think that this team's going to be pretty solid, and I've got them as a play-in tournament team for this year. With the 11th seed, I have the New Orleans Pelicans. I'm lower on the Pelicans than most, but I really just don't see how this roster fits together. They have a lot of talent, but I'm not quite as high on Zion as some people are. I don't necessarily think that he's a top 25 player in the league at this point. I don't know what he's done to prove that to anyone. I have him much closer to the 40 mark, similar to where I have Brandon Ingram as well. And while they do have plenty of good rotation pieces, not a whole lot of them are good floor spacers. So I don't see how this roster works, and for those reasons, I've got them here at the 11th seed. At the 12th seed, I have the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, I think the Timberwolves are probably the 10th most talented team in the Western Conference, and perhaps even the 9th most talented team if we were to see the Spurs move on, the Rockets move on from James Harden. But I, similar to the Pelicans, don't necessarily see how the pieces fit together here. They are really missing some wing players that can play strong defense, and I think that that's really going to hurt them in this year's regular season. Karl-Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell are terrific players. I think a little bit higher on both of them than the general consensus, and I think that pick and roll duo is going to be downright unstoppable. However, I don't see how they get stops on the other end, and that's why I've got them here at the 12th seed. At the 13th seed, I have the Memphis Grizzlies. I think that their talent level is probably a little bit higher than this, but similar to the Pelicans, this roster just doesn't fit the best in my opinion. They are really lacking shooting. The only real plus three-point shooter on this team is Jaren Jackson Jr., and I suppose Grayson Allen as well. But Jackson is the best shooter on this team and the most prominent player who can shoot it on this team by far. And he's going to miss quite a bit of time to open up the season, it sounds like. And so I think that they're going to struggle to open up the year. Once Jackson does come back, I think that they'll be much closer to the 500 team that they were last season. But because of the time he misses, I've got them all the way down here at 13. At the 14th seed, I have the Sacramento Kings. The Kings are a team that I don't know what they're doing at this point. I'm a big De'Aaron Fox fan. I think that Tyrese Haliburton was the steal of the draft in this past year's draft, obviously. But I'm not as high on Buddy Hield as many people are. I think Richaun Holmes is a quality starting center and Harrison Barnes is a quality wing. But I'm not a big fan of their coach. And for those reasons, I've got this team slotted at number 14. There is also a dearth of talent in the Western Conference. So even though they are the 14th seed, I still think that they are something like the 23rd or 24th best team in the entire league, and I think they'd finish much higher in the East. And finally, with the 15th seed, I have the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm a bit of a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander hater. I wouldn't say hater because I do think that he's quite good. I just feel that I'm a bit more realistic about him and not quite thinking that he's going to average 27 points per game this year like I've seen some people are believing. And with that, in combination with the rest of the roster being replacement level players and the probability that the other semi-good veterans like Al Horford and George Hill and Trevor Ariza could be moved on from almost immediately, I just don't think this team's going to be any good. And in a stacked Western Conference, they are the worst team in my opinion. Moving on to the East, with the 1 seed, we have the Milwaukee Bucks. I think that they have the best regular season in the NBA. They've surrounded him with a second all-star caliber talent. So they essentially have 3 all-star level players plus Giannis Antetokounmpo. They also have a 4th above average starter in Brook Lopez. And with that high level talent alongside some solid but not great depth, I still think that they are easily going to be the best team in the Eastern Conference, at least in the regular season. With the number 2 seed, I have the Philadelphia 76ers. I think that this team makes a lot more sense now than they have any time before, surrounding Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons with some shooters. And I think that Doc Rivers is an upgrade on the coaching front as well. This is going to be a pretty solid team. I've got them as my 2 seed. At the 3 seed, we have the Brooklyn Nets. Now, a lot of people have been putting the Nets as something more like the 5th or 6th seed in the East, but I am perhaps the hugest Karis LeVert fan on the internet. I think that he is a true top 50 player in the NBA, because of his scoring ability. I also think he's a better playmaker than people give him credit for, and he's also a plus defender. And since I'm high on him, as well as the rest of the options on this team being quite good, I think that they'll be okay with KD and Kyrie sitting games out. I still think they're going to be a really good team, and that's why I've got them as the 3 seed, despite the fact that their stars could have some load management. At the 4 seed, I have the Miami Heat. Now, the Heat are a team that had a lot of success in the bubble, but I'm not quite sure that they will be able to replicate that success because they just are more built for the playoffs than they are for the regular season, which is not taking anything away from them. It just means that they win when it matters most instead of when it isn't as of the utmost importance. So I still have them as the 4th seed in the East, and I think that they are certainly a contender to win the conference. With the 5th seed, I have the Boston Celtics. I'm lower on the Celtics than most because I think that the Kemba Walker injury is going to hurt them quite a bit. And I don't really love the depth on this team. I think that their bench is quite bad, and I also think that Tristan Thompson is a downgrade from Daniel Tice. So if he is getting the starter minutes, I don't think that that's an upgrade for this team. I think that they're still going to be good, especially once Kemba comes back, but because of the opportunity being there for them to get off to a slow start, I have them behind 4 other very good teams in the Eastern Conference. At the 6th seed is perhaps the biggest shocker of the video. I have the Washington Wizards. I think that this team is going to be very good. Last year, they had a top 10 offense in the NBA, and they essentially added Russell Westbrook in exchange for nothing. So I think that he is really going to be impactful for this team. He's going to make them quite a bit better. And with him, in combination with Bradley Beal, 2 guys that are top 25 players in the NBA, I think that they are better than a lot of the other teams on this list, including the team that I have as my 7th seed, which is the Toronto Raptors. Now, I get that this might be a huge shocker, and it is probably pretty egregious of me to put the Wizards over the Raptors, but despite the fact that Nick Nurse is one of the best coaches in the NBA, in my opinion, he probably is the single best coach in the league. I just don't think that this team is going to be all that good this year. Last season, they had the 2nd best defense in the NBA, and a lot of that was off of sheer luck because they allowed the single most amount of 3-point attempts per game, and they allowed the lowest 3-point shooting percentage for the entire season. So, pretty much their strategy of giving up open threes worked out because teams missed those open looks. And I think that it's the rule of the mean. We will see regression to the mean. Their opponents are going to shoot better, and their defense will be worse. I also think that we could see Kyle Lowry take a step back as an offensive weapon. And with that, in combination with teams starting to realize that Pascal Siakam is pretty easy to guard if you can cut off his spin move, I just don't think that this team is going to be all that good, and they are a strong regression candidate for me. I've got them dropping all the way to the 7th seed. With the 8th seed, I have the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers are a team that I like more than the Raptors as of right now, but because of the chance that they could blow it up a little bit, trade away Victor Oladipo, trade away Miles Turner, I think that there's a chance that they could end up finishing with a worse roster than the Raptors, and for that reason, I've got them 1 spot behind them. However, I do think that this team is going to be solid with Malcolm Brogdon, who's a guy I like quite a bit, with Domantas Sabonis. I also think that they could struggle to be really the greater than the sum of their parts because of the conflict of who's the lead guard between Oladipo and Brogdon. How do the centers work together? Who has the ball in their hands? Is TJ Warren going to demand more touches after his stellar play in the bubble? Who knows? This is an unpredictable team to me, and I have them right in the middle of the Eastern Conference as the 8th seed. At the 9th seed, I have the Atlanta Hawks. This team got quite a bit better on the offensive end this past offseason, but they really didn't address the defense too much, which is really something that they needed to do. I'm a big fan of Cam Reddish, and I think that he could have a breakout year for this team in his sophomore season. But outside of that, and Clint Capella, there really aren't too many plus defenders in this rotation. I suppose Onyeka Okongwu as well. And of course, Chris Dunn is fantastic, but I'm not necessarily sure that he's going to get all that many minutes in a crowded Hawks backcourt. So, despite the fact that I think that there's a chance that they have a top 10 offense, I think the defense is going to be close to the 25th best, and that's just not going to get it done to put this team in playoff position. I do think that they will pretty safely be a team in the play-in tournament, though. At the 10th seed, I have the Charlotte Hornets. The Hornets are one of my favorite teams in the NBA this season. I think that they are going to be a terrific watch. I'm a big fan of LaMelo Ball. I think he's going to come in and be the clear best rookie in this class during his freshman season in the NBA. I think we could see him post a stat line of something like 15 points, 10 assists, and 8 rebounds or something like that. And obviously that would be terrific. And with him in combination with an already solid guard backcourt with Devontae Graham and Terry Rozier, as well as an improved wing position with the addition of Gordon Hayward on top of an already talented group with Miles Bridges and PJ Washington, I think that this team has a chance to outperform what a lot of people think, and I have them squeaking into the play-in tournament in these predictions. At the 11th seed, I have the Orlando Magic. This is another team that I think is probably better than where I have them here. I think that they're a better team than Charlotte as of now, and quite honestly, I would probably take them over Atlanta as well. However, because of the chance that they blow it up, trade away Evan Fournier, trade away Nikola Vucevic, trade away Aaron Gordon, and really focus in on a rebounder on the young players like Jonathan Isaac, Markelle Fultz, and Chuma Okeke, I have them a little lower here than I actually believe they are in terms of skill. However, they are not as skilled as they were last season with Jonathan Isaac being out for the year, so that does hurt them quite a bit as well. So I've got them at 11. As the 12th best team in the Eastern Conference, keep in mind, these are predictions, so I shouldn't even be saying the 12th best team. They're the 12th seed. I have the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think that Colin Sexton is a breakout candidate. I think that he's probably one of my top 5 favorite guys for the Most Improved Player award for this year, and we could see him take a huge jump in the playmaking department, which would make him a super valuable player at the lead guard position, as he is already a 20-plus point per game scorer. And with that, in combination with some capable veteran players like Kevin Love, Andre Drummond, as well as Larry Nance Jr. coming off the bench, and the potential for the young players like Kevin Porter Jr., Isaac Okoro, and Darius Garland to continue to perform, I'm a little bit higher on the Cavaliers than a lot of people are, and I have them finishing above teams like the Pistons and Bulls. Speaking of the Pistons, I have them as the 13th seed in the Eastern Conference. I think that this team is probably quite a bit better than this right now. If Blake Griffin is healthy, Derrick Rose is healthy, this team actually has a chance to really contend for the play-in tournament. However, with the chance that they trade away those guys, or they're not healthy, or they just don't end up playing that much as they try to refocus this rebuild around the young players, I don't think the Pistons will perform quite to the level that they're capable of with the talent on the roster. So I have them finishing as the 13th seed this year. At the 14th seed, I have the Chicago Bulls. Now, I am probably a bit of a Bulls hater. I think I'm a little bit lower on them than most people are. However, I think I can provide some solid reasoning for that. Number one, I don't think that Lauri Markkanen is all that good in general. I think he's one of the more overrated players in the NBA. He really struggled last year, and I think that he is not the high-level prospect that many people view him to be. And for those reasons, I'm very much questioning how good they can actually be. I also think that Zach LaVine is a candidate to be traded. I'm not super high on what he does, and I don't think that he's a player that impacts winning all that much. He also is interfering with Kobe White's development, and I think that White has a much higher ceiling than LaVine does. So I would probably move on from LaVine if I were the Bulls, and if that does happen, it's getting rid of their best player, and it would make them quite a bit worse. So I think that this team could struggle and not quite reach the ceiling that people have set for them. At the 15 seed, I have the New York Knicks. Their best player is Julius Randle. They can't shoot. Enough said. They're going to be the worst team in the NBA. Just my prediction and my opinion, but moving on. We'll start with these postseason predictions by making some predictions for the play-in tournament where, according to my standings here, the Dallas Mavericks would face the Golden State Warriors, the Houston Rockets would face the San Antonio Spurs, the Raptors would face the Pacers, the Hawks would face the Hornets. So we'll start in the West where the Mavericks are playing the Warriors in the 7-8 game. The winner of this gets the 7th seed and will take on the Los Angeles Clippers. I'm going to take the Warriors to win because I think that they have the best player in the game in Steph Curry. So the Warriors are the 7th seed here. And then in the Rockets-Spurs game, I am going to predict the Spurs to win because I think that they have the best coach in the NBA in Greg Popovich. So now we have the Spurs and the Mavericks facing off for the 8th seed, where I think the Mavs will win because Luka. So that sets the Western Conference playing field as the Nuggets, Clippers, Jazz, Lakers, Trailblazers, Suns, Warriors, and Mavericks. In the Eastern Conference, I think that the Raptors beat the Pacers because of the Nick Nurse advantage. And I think that the Hawks beat the Hornets because they are overall just quite a bit more talented as a whole. And finally, in the game for the 8th seed, we see the Atlanta Hawks knock off the Indiana Pacers as Trae Young goes absolutely nuts and drops a 50-point game. I'm making this up. It's supposed to be fun. It's just the play-in tournament. Who really cares? It's a one-game thing. So now that we have the two fields set, we're able to make some predictions. In the Nuggets-Warriors series, I think the Nuggets win in a 5-game set. I think that they're quite a bit better than the Warriors, but because of Steph Curry's talent, the Warriors take a game off of them. In the Clippers-Mavericks series, I have the Clippers repeating what they did last year as the 2-7 matchup against the Mavs and winning in 6 games behind some great performances from Kawhi Leonard. In the 3-6 series, we have the Jazz taking on the Suns, which the Jazz win quite easily behind some terrific performances from Donovan Mitchell and Bojan Bogdanovic. And finally, in the 4-5 series, the Lakers take the win as we still see the Trailblazers struggle to stop Anthony Davis despite the acquisitions of Derrick Jones Jr. and Robert Covington. In the Eastern Conference, the Bucks knock off the Hawks quite easily in what is essentially a huge mismatch. The Pacers defeat the Raptors, the 76ers defeat the Raptors in once again a matchup that just has a pretty significant disparity in the level of talent. 76ers win in 5 games. The Nets defeat the Wizards in a sweep as the Wizards finally reach the end of their surprising run. And the Heat beat the Celtics in a great 7-game series where we see Tyler Hero make a game winner at the buzzer of Game 7. I had to throw that in there for my Tyler Hero fans out there. In the Western Conference semifinals, we see the Nuggets take on the Lakers, where the Lakers repeat the feat that they made in the Western Conference Finals this year, where they defeat the Nuggets behind some stellar performances from Anthony Davis, where he cements himself as a top 5 player in the NBA. We also see the Clippers knock off the Jazz, as the Jazz really struggle to find someone who can match up with Kawhi Leonard. They're able to push that series to 6, though, and the Lakers beat the Nuggets in 7 games on the other side of the Western Conference semifinals. Moving back to the East, the Bucks are taking on the Heat, and in a hard-fought series, the Bucks win in 7 games, as Drew Holiday proves to be the key difference, and the Heat miss the streaky shooting that Jay Crowder brought to them during the Bucks series last year. In the 76ers Nets series, Joel Embiid proves to be unstoppable. Ben Simmons proves that he is a legit top 15 player and that the jump he made in the regular season was true. And the 76ers reached the conference finals for the first time with Simmons and Embiid on the roster. Heading back to the Western Conference where the Clippers are taking on the Lakers. It's a terrific series, and We see the teams trade blows back and forth, and in a Game 7, Serge Ibaka shuts down Anthony Davis, and the Clippers upset the Lakers in a terrific 7-game series and head to their first NBA Finals in franchise history. On the other end, we see a team that hasn't made the finals in 40-something years in the Milwaukee Bucks take care of business against the 76ers in 6 games. Well, the duo of Embiid and Simmons was terrific and pushed the Sixers to the Eastern Conference Finals. The productivity of Chris Middleton proved to be the difference maker as he averaged 26 points per game in this 6-game series. Now we are in the NBA Finals between the Los Angeles Clippers and the Milwaukee Bucks, the two teams that I view as the best from each conference, and Giannis Antetokounmpo cements his place as the single greatest player in the NBA en route to winning his first championship in a terrific 7-game series against the Clippers, where Kawhi Leonard and Paul George put up a great fight, and Luke Kennard cements himself as a starting-level player moving into the future. However, the Milwaukee Bucks are the NBA champions, and Giannis brings the first trophy back to Milwaukee since Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did it in the early 70s. I hope that this was a fun video for you to watch. These are really what I think is going to happen in this season. I know that I kind of played it up and made it a bit more fun in the second half of the video, where I tried to add some storylines to the NBA playoffs, but that is really what I think is going to happen this season. I have the Bucks pegged as my finals champion pick and the Clippers as my Western Conference champion. So we'll see what happens. I'm sure that there will be a few surprises along the way. It wouldn't be anything else if it weren't the end. It wouldn't be the NBA if it were anything else. And I'm super excited for the season to start tomorrow. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Who is your pick to be the NBA champion? Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I think that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.